The great chamber of the Galactic Council was not made of stone or metal, but of solidified light and sound. It shimmered, a vast dome where the air itself seemed to vibrate with the power of those who stood within it. Delegates from 100 worlds gathered, their forms a spectacle of biological wonder. There were the Vortex, beings of swirling gas and sharp intelligence. Next to them sat the sturdy, rock-skinned Gravani. The elegant, plant-like Viridi swayed gently. In this kaleidoscope of alien life, one figure looked simple, almost plain. This was Jin, the human envoy. He wore a simple gray suit, a symbol of Earth's desire for unity, and his calm face was a mask over a pounding heart. He had come to ask for mercy. The Galactic Council, in its wisdom, had decided that new member species must follow strict rules. For Earth, this meant a harsh quota. The Council demanded 80% of Earth's rare minerals, the very materials needed to build ships and medical technology to help humanity recover from a difficult century. Jin had argued for 3 cycles now, using logic, showing data, appealing to galactic law. Today was the final hearing. The High Arbiter of the Council was called the Luminal. It was not a creature of flesh, but a complex crystalline structure that floated above the assembly. Light pulsed within it, and when it spoke, its voice was like many chimes ringing together, translated instantly by the small devices everyone wore. The petition from Sol 3, designated Earth, is now closed for deliberation, the Luminal announced. The chamber fell silent, a sea of strange eyes fixed on Jin. The Council has reviewed the human appeals. The resource allocation is non-negotiable. It is the price of protection and membership within our peaceful community. Jin took a slow breath. He knew this was the expected answer. His job was to make one final perfect argument. High Arbiter, honored delegates, he began, his voice clear and steady. Earth accepts the responsibilities of membership. We ask only for the chance to grow strong enough to be a true contributor. Taking our foundation stones does not build a stronger galaxy. It only ensures one of its newest members will forever limp. A strong alliance is built on mutual strength, not permanent debt. A low murmur moved through the chamber. Some delegates shifted, their forms rustling or glowing differently. The Gravani representative, a being named Rock, spoke with a voice like grinding stones. The human concept of fairness is emotional. Galactic economics are not. Your planet is resource-rich and defenseless. The strong guide the weak. This is order. We do not wish to be weak, Jin replied, turning to face Rock. We wish to be partners. Execute this quota, and you will not get a cooperative member. You will get a desperate one. And humanity, he said, pausing to look around the room, making eye contact with as many delegates as he could, has a long history of finding creative solutions when cornered. His words were meant to be a warning, a final plea for reason. But in the chamber, they were taken as a threat. The Luminal's light flashed, a bright, painful burst of white. You speak of creativity and defiance, the Luminal chimed, its tone now cold and sharp. You confirm the Council's concern. The human species is disruptive. Your history is a scroll of conflict and unpredictable action. This cannot be allowed to infect galactic stability. Jin felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The translation device on his lapel, which also served as a recorder and life sign monitor, felt suddenly heavy. I speak only of the natural desire to survive and prosper. Is that not the right of every species here? Rights are granted by the Council, the Luminal stated, and can be revoked. The human envoy has repeatedly challenged our decrees. This is more than petitioning. This is diplomatic insolence. It is a disease of disobedience. To protect the whole, a single cell must sometimes be removed. The meaning of the words crashed into Jin. He took an involuntary step back. You You cannot. I am an envoy under your own charter of safe passage. The charter protects envoys of member species in good standing, the luminal corrected. Your standing is now forfeit. The sentence for insolence before the council is clear. No vote was called. No further discussion was had. The luminal glowed brighter, and a thin beam of coherent energy, silent and silver, lanced down from the apex of the dome. It struck Jin directly in the chest. There was no scream. No dramatic flash. Jin's eyes widened in a moment of pure, shocked understanding. He looked down at the point of impact, and his gaze lifted, not to the luminal, but to a small, hidden sensor in his own lapel. Pin, a sensor facing not out, but in, recording his own expression. A final, raw data point for home. His body did not burn or explode. It disintegrated from the molecular level upwards, turning to a fine, gray ash that settled on the polished floor in the shape of a man for a second. Before scattering, the chamber was utterly silent. The scent of ozone and something faintly organic hum in the air. The luminal's light returned to its usual soft pulse. Let this be recorded. The human threat has been neutralized. Dispatch orders. A peacekeeping fleet is to move to the Sol system and secure human compliance with the resource quota. This meeting is adjourned. The delegates began to file out, some avoiding the faint dust on the floor. The lesson had been delivered that deep beneath the mountains of South Korea. In a place that did not officially exist, a low, urgent alarm began to sound. It was not a siren, but a specific, repeating three-note chime that echoed in a concrete-walled control room. That senior duty officer Hana jerked upright in her chair, her coffee forgotten. The main holographic display, which usually showed orbital traffic and diplomatic channels, had gone a solid, ominous red. Text scrolled across it in clean, military font, source. Envoy pin, terminal burst transmission. Status. Envoy vital SIG ends terminated. Location. Galactic Council Chamber Core Sector. Final feed analysis. Hostile executive action. Nitrogen monoxide warning. No trial. Protocol trigger confirmed. Authorization. Unlocked. Stand by for biometric confirmation. Hana's blood turned to ice. Her hands flew over the console, bringing up the final transmission. There was no audio of the event, only the last second of Jin's biometrics, a spike of adrenaline, then nothing. And the final image, his own face in the microseconds of dissolution, his eyes holding a message not of fear, but of grim, furious confirmation. It was the trigger. Her fingers, now steady with a terrible purpose, typed her authorization code. A second screen lit up, requiring a second code from a different officer. She slapped the COM switch. Colonel Min, to the pit. Immediately. Retribution protocol is live. Within minutes, a man with close-cropped gray hair and a severe face entered the room. This was Min. He did not ask questions. He saw the screen, saw the final image of Jin, and his jaw tightened. He moved to a separate terminal, placed his palm on a scanner, and typed a long string of characters. The main display changed. The red warning was replaced by two words, glowing and calm. Blue letters, Retribution mode. Confirm, Min said, his voice a gravelly whisper. Hana pressed the final key. Confirmed. Sujin's hammer is activated. All subsystems are go. The signal is being broadcast to all deep cover assets and archive sites. Min stared at the words. This was the moment he had helped design for, but had prayed would never come. It was not a declaration of war. It was something else. It was the opening of a very old, very dark playbook. They think they killed a man, Min said, finally looking at Hana. His eyes were hard. They did not kill a man. They turned off the only warning label the galaxy had. On the surface, Earth was quiet. People went to work. Children went to school. Governments issued confused statements about a delay in diplomatic talks. But in the buried places, in hidden server farms and silent orbital platforms, a new set of instructions began to run. The first packets of data, disguised as cultural exchanges, artistic files, and historical archives, were compiled. They were humanity's opening move in a game the Galactic Council did not even know they were playing. The war had not begun with a shot, but with a silent, digital sigh leaving Earth's atmosphere, carrying within it the seeds of chaos. Jin was gone. Now it was everyone else's turn to be unsettled. On the surface, things seemed quiet. The official news from Earth's governments was one of confusion and sorrow. They spoke of a tragic incident at the Galactic Council and demanded an explanation. Public broadcasts showed somber speeches and images of Jin. It was a performance of grief, and it was convincing. The deeper truth was locked away in places like the bunker dot in that underground room. Hannah and Min worked without rest. The blue glow of the main screen, which read Retribution mode, lit their tired faces. Their job was not to command a fleet. It was to oversee the first silent phase of a plan decades in the making. This plan was called Sujin's Hammer. Its architect, Min, had always been a quiet man. He believed that if you ever had to fight a stronger enemy, you did not punch their armor. You made the armor itself sick. The fleet is moving, Hannah said, her eyes on a subscreen. It showed the distant, fuzzy signatures of Council peacekeeper ships warping toward the edge of the Sol system. They were fast and powerful. Earth's own few defense ships looked like children's toys next to them. Estimated arrival at Pluto's orbit in 6 hours. Min did not look at the fleet. He was focused on a different screen, filled with complex lines of linguistic code. Let them come. They are looking for a fight we will not give them. Not their kind of fight, anyway. He called over his shoulder. Kai, are we ready? At a nearby station sat a young man named Kai. Before this, he had been a professor of xenolinguistics, a man who loved the music of alien languages. Now, he was using that love to build a weapon. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but they were sharp. The packet is finished. It's beautiful in a terrible way. The core of humanity's first strike was a virus. But it was not a virus that attacked machines or flesh. It attacked meaning. Min had realized long ago that the Galactic Council's greatest strength was also its weakness. It relied on common translation. Every delegate used a biosymbiote, a living creature attached to the ear or brain. That translated all languages into the user's own. It was the foundation of their union. Kai's creation was a piece of digital information, a neuro-linguistic pathogen. It was hidden inside what looked like a simple cultural exchange file, a compilation of human music, art, and literature that Earth was voluntarily sending to the galactic net as a sign of mourning. Inside the beautiful music and images was a hidden code. This code did not try to break the symbiotes. It reprogrammed them very subtly. How does it work, simply? Hannah asked, needing to understand the tool she was helping to unleash. Kai sighed, as if explaining spoiled the dark art of it. The symbiotes learn. They are living translators. My code introduces glitches, small errors in pattern recognition. It makes them translate certain words of agreement as words of doubt. It makes tones of respect sound like hidden sarcasm. It will make the user feel uneasy, paranoid, like everyone is whispering behind their back, even when they are not. It spreads through their shared communication networks. So we are not blowing them up. We are making them not trust each other, Hannah summarized. Yes, Min said, a cold satisfaction in his voice. We are giving them a headache that will split their alliance. Launch the packet. With a final keystroke from Kai, the first blow was struck. From hidden transmitters on the dark side of the moon and from disguised satellites, the data streamed out. It moved at the speed of light, a peaceful offering of human culture, laced with silent poison. On the lead council ship, the Judgment's Light, the Gravani commander, Rock, received the Earth transmission. He saw it as a sign of surrender. They send their art. They know they are beaten. A feeble attempt to appease us. He ordered the file to be processed and added to the Galactic Cultural Bank, a routine procedure. The virus slipped inside. The effect was not immediate or dramatic. It began in small ways. During a strategy meeting on the Judgment's Light, the Vortex tactical officer said, "Our approach vector is optimal." Through Rock's symbiote, the word optimal carried a faint, subconscious echo of the word predictable. Rock felt a flash of irrational irritation. "Are you questioning my plan?" He growled. The Vortex officer, confused, withdrew. A seed of distrust was planted. Back on the council station, things were stranger. Two delegates, the Verity, and a species of amphibious traders called the Selec, met to discuss trade routes. The Verity's gentle floral greeting was translated by the Selac's infected symbiote as being overly formal and cold, implying hidden disapproval. The Selec responded with clipped words, which the Verity then heard as outright hostility. A simple business meeting ended with both parties leaving in a huff, each believing the other had insulted them first. The data packet spread, as all popular cultural files did, across the connected networks of 1,000 worlds. The virus replicated, weaving its way into the Common Translation database. The symbiotes updated, and the glitch became a feature. Within 48 hours, the Galactic Council was no longer a unified body. It was a room full of individuals who were suddenly, inexplicably annoyed with each other. The luminal, its crystalline mind partially protected by its non-biological nature, could sense the discord, but could not find the source. Order, there must be order. It chimed, but the word order reached several delegates as obedience, sparking fresh resentment. On Earth, the team monitored the chaos. Social media feeds from alien networks, which Kai expertly translated, showed a spike in arguments, misunderstandings, and conspiracy theories. Minor diplomatic incidents were reported between longtime ally species. "It's working," Kai said, but he didn't sound happy. He sounded like a gardener watching a poisonous plant bloom exactly as planned. "Phase 1 is a success," Min stated. "They are looking for spies, for traitors among themselves. They will not look for the weapon in the words they are all speaking." He turned to Hana. "Activate the field agents. It is time for Phase 2. Let's see how their machines like human illogic." Hana sent the coded signal. Across the galaxy, men and women who had lived normal lives as traders, scholars, or maintenance workers received a simple message on a private device. The message was a childhood nursery rhyme or a random line of poetry. To them, it meant one thing: the hammer had fallen. It was time to go to work. One of these agents was a woman named Su Min. She ran a small tech repair shop on the busy trading station of Waypoint Tau. She was well liked, known for her skill with broken generators and her quiet, helpful nature. When her signal came, she closed her shop early. In her back room, she accessed a hidden terminal. Her task was not violent. She uploaded a series of software patches to the station's Central Traffic Control AI. The patches contained strange, recursive loops and paradoxical commands based on human philosophical puzzles. The classic one was, "This statement is false." To a human, it was a fun brain teaser. To the station's highly logical AI, it was a catastrophic error. It tried to parse the command, found it could not be resolved as true or false, and entered a loop of increasing priority to solve it. Within an hour, the traffic control system was utterly distracted, its processing power consumed by trying to solve unsolvable riddles. Docking schedules collapsed. Cargo ships drifted, waiting for instructions that never came. The station's manager screamed at his technicians, who could only say the AI was thinking itself sick. Similar scenes played out at key points across council space. Logistics AIs were fed the concept of sarcasm and began to misinterpret supply requests. A request for 10 tons of fuel might be read as a joke and be ignored or replaced with something useless. The predictable, ordered machine of galactic civilization began to hiccup, then to stutter, then to grind towards a halt. On the Judgment's light, Rock received reports of the chaos behind him. His fleet was still powerful, but his supply lines were getting confused. The unity of command was fraying. He stood on his bridge, looking at the blue-green marble of Earth growing larger in his view screen. He felt a deep, unsettling frustration. They had executed one human to show their strength. So why did it feel like they were the ones being slowly, cleverly taken apart? He had come expecting a battle. He was beginning to realize, with a dawning and cold fear, that the battle had already started, and it was not happening in space around Earth. It was happening inside the very mind of the civilization he represented. The human retaliation was not a roar of defiance. It was a whisper of madness, spreading through the galaxy's ears. The Galactic Council's peacekeeping fleet, led by Commander Rock's mighty flagship, reached the orbit of Mars. It was an awesome display of power. Ships shaped like blades and spheres, and living crystals hung against the black sky, their weapons glowing with contained energy. They waited for humanity's response, for the panicked messages of surrender, or the pathetic flare of primitive missiles. What they received was silence. On Earth, public broadcasts showed calm officials urging citizens to remain in their homes, to stay calm. There was no declaration of war, no grand speech. The only military movement was defensive. Human ships, small and few, pulled back to guard the orbital platforms around Earth and the Moon. They made no aggressive moves. It was confusing. Inside the bunker, Min watched the alien fleet on the screen. "They are waiting for a play from a rulebook we are not using," he said to Hana. "Their order relies on predictable responses. We must remain unpredictable. Activate the Ghost Protocol." On the surface, in a military base in the mountains, a man named Day received his orders. He was a colonel, but his unit was not like others. They were not trained for open battle. They were experts in something older: confusion, infiltration, and making a superior force feel utterly lost. Their equipment was not about bigger guns, but about not being seen or understood. Day gathered his team, their faces serious in the dim light of a briefing room. A map of the United States, where the Council's first ground forces were predicted to land, glowed on the wall. "They will come here," Day said, pointing to a vast, empty desert area. "Wide open spaces. Good for their heavy units. They will expect us to meet them with tanks or dig in fortifications. We will not be there. And when they land, they will find that we are. Everywhere." Meanwhile, the virus in the translation symbiotes was doing its work across the galaxy. The Council station was in chaos. A minor disagreement over resource allocation between the Vortex and the Gravani had escalated. The Vortex delegate, hearing Rock's demand for immediate compliance as a personal threat, had dissolved its temporary physical form in protest, creating a small, messy gas storm in the Council chamber. The Verity were singing sad, discordant songs, their plant-like leaves wilting from the perceived hostility in the air. The luminal pulsed with frustrated light, its logical commands being twisted into insults by the infected translators of the other delegates. The Great Alliance was cracking from the inside, not by force, but by misunderstood words. Rock, on his bridge, felt the strain. Reports from home were troubling. Supply ships were lost or delayed. Command messages were strangely worded, filled with what felt like passive aggression. He needed a quick, decisive victory on Earth to restore order and focus. He gave the command. Send down the first occupation group. Secure a landing zone. Show them our strength. If they resist, level the area. The landing craft descended like metal seeds. They settled on the red desert dust in perfect formation. Ramps dropped and troops emerged. They were Gorvins, a hulking species with thick hides and a reputation for fearless direct combat. They fanned out, their heavy weapons scanning the empty horizon. They saw nothing but rocks and dry wind. Their commander, a veteran named Groth, growled in satisfaction. See? They hide in their holes. Pathetic. Establish a perimeter. We will wait for their cowardly attack. The attack did not come. Instead, as the sun set, the Gorvins began to experience problems. First, their communication channels filled with static, but not normal static. It was layered with faint, distorted sounds, a child's laughter, a snippet of old earth music, a whispered poem in Korean. It was unsettling. Then, their motion sensors began to trigger, showing movement all around them, but when they looked, there was nothing. They were junk shots from invisible enemies. Day's team, the ghosts, were at work. They wore adaptive camouflage suits that mimicked the background almost perfectly. They used small drones to project false sounds and heat signatures. They did not shoot a single Gorvin that first night. They simply made them nervous. A Gorvin soldier on watch would hear a rustle, spin around, and see only shifting shadows. Another would feel a puff of air on his neck from a drone that had already zipped away by morning. The Gorvins were tired and irritable. Then, the water recyclers in their camp failed. The filters were clogged with a harmless, sticky gel that smelled faintly of honey. It was a nuisance, not an attack, but it meant they had to use precious reserve water. Groth roared with anger, pounding his fist on a console. Fight us like warriors. He bellowed into the empty desert. The desert did not answer. The second night was worse. The ghosts escalated. They used focused sound projectors to make voices seem to come from right behind a soldier. They used small lasers to create fleeting, impossible flashes of light in the corner of an eye. A Gorvin would swing his weapon, firing at a shadow, only to alert his comrades and cause more confusion. They started firing at phantoms, wasting ammunition. Sleep became impossible. Groth requested permission from orbit to flatten a wider area. Rock denied it. You are being harassed by primitives. Crush them and move on. Do not waste orbital fire on ghosts. But Groth could not crush what he could not find. On the third day, the ghosts changed tactics again. They did something even stranger. As a Gorvin patrol moved through a narrow canyon, a hidden speaker played a piece of music. It was not aggressive. It was a beautiful, sad piece by a human composer named Batch. The complex, mathematical beauty of it echoed off the stone walls. The Gorvins stopped, listening. Their culture valued loud, rhythmic war chants. This was something else. It was ordered, yet emotional. It made no sense to them, and the confusion was more disarming than any weapon. Then, small, tough drones zipped down and dropped items into the center of the Gorvin camp before darting away. Not explosives, packages. Inside were things. A small, intricate puzzle box made of wood. A paper book with vivid paintings of Earth's forests and oceans. A heated container of a complex aromatic dish called bibimbap with instructions. Groth, furious and curious, opened the book. The images were of a world teeming with serene alien beauty. It was the opposite of the desolate desert they stood in. It showed a planet worth preserving, not just conquering. He stared at the food, the colors vibrant. His symbiote translated the instructions. Mix well. Nourishment for body and thought. It was a psychological attack, far more advanced than any bullet. The Gorvins were warriors, red for clear enemies and clear victories. They were not prepared for an enemy that refused to fight, that instead showed them puzzling beauty and offered them lunch. The frustration began to curdle into a deep, unsettling doubt. What were they even fighting for here? What was this species? Back on the council station, the chaos was turning to paralysis. Key votes were postponed because delegates could not agree on the wording of the agenda. The trade network was seizing up as is, infected with human logic bombs, continued to malfunction. The Luminal was receiving reports of the farcical situation on Earth, mighty warrior race being driven to exhaustion not by force, but by tricks and culture. For the first time, a flicker of something like fear passed through its crystalline consciousness. They had tried to cut out what they saw as a diseased limb. But the disease was not in the limb. It was in the very idea of humanity. It was a contagious idea that spread through language, through logic, through culture. And they had just given it a reason to spread everywhere. ROK stared at the planet below, a new and cold understanding dawning on him. The execution of the Envoy was not the end of a problem. It was the detonation of a weapon they had never seen before. Earth was not fighting a war of liberation. It was waging a war of perception. And they were losing. Commander Rock stood on the bridge of the Judgment's light, his rocky fists clenched. The reports from the surface were not reports of battle. They were reports of a sickness. Groth's Gorvins were not defeated. They were demoralized, confused, and psychologically exhausted. They had captured a grand total of 3 humans, elderly farmers who had wandered too close to the perimeter by accident. The Gorvins, following protocol, had taken them prisoner. What happened next became the final straw. Instead of being thrown into cells, the 3 humans, a man named Jun Xiao, and 2 women, Mi Qiang and Yun Ji, were treated with baffling politeness. They were given comfortable quarters. They were offered food, which they shared recipes for. Jun Xiao, who had a small wireless music player, played gentle folk songs. Mi Qiang, a former teacher, began drawing diagrams in the dirt, trying to explain the life cycle of a butterfly to her hulking guards. The Gorvins, bred for war and simplicity, had no framework for this. These were not fierce warriors. They were interesting. They were kind. When Groth angrily interrogated them, asking for troop locations, Jun Xiao simply smiled sadly and said, "Why would we tell you that? It would only lead to more sadness for everyone. Would you like to see a picture of my granddaughter? She just learned to walk." This was transmitted by confused Gorvin medics up to the flagship. Rock watched the feed. He saw the weary, resigned kindness in the old human's eyes. He saw one of his own toughest warriors, off camera, asking in a low voice what a granddaughter was. The scene filled him with a hotter rage than any enemy charge ever could. It was an attack on the very concept of war. "Enough!" he roared. "End this farce. Prepare a precision orbital strike on their major population centers. We will break their spirit with fear." The order was given. Targeting systems locked onto cities like Seoul, Nairobi, and Berlin. At that moment, on Earth, a general alert flashed in the bunker. Hannah saw it first. They are preparing for a kinetic strike. Multiple targets. They are moving past occupation. This is extermination. Min did not flinch. He had expected this. Activate Black Sky. It was a protocol named for a simple human observation. On the darkest night, a single point of light is most visible. All across Earth, in hidden silos, and from submarines deep under the ocean, hundreds of missiles rose. But they were not aimed at the stars. They were not nuclear. They flew in graceful arcs and detonated at a very specific altitude, just above the planet's major landmasses. They did not explode with fire, but with a dense metallic chaff and a powerful, scrambling electromagnetic pulse. The effect was instantaneous and visually stunning. The sky over half the planet turned into a shimmering silver-gray haze, like a brilliant fog. Satellite signals vanished. Radar became useless. Long-range scanners saw only a blinding, chaotic cloud. On the Judgment's light, the tactical screens dissolved into static snow. "What is this?" Rock bellowed. "Some form of obscurant field, Commander. It is not harmful to life, but it is perfectly tuned to our sensors. We cannot see the surface. We cannot get targeting locks. Any kinetic weapon would be blind," his sensor officer reported, a note of disbelief in his voice. "They have painted their own sky blind to hide from us?" Rock asked, stunned. It was a move of such profound, self-inflicted inconvenience, it seemed insane. "But it worked. More than that, sir," the officer continued. "The material is charged. It is also broadcasting." "Broadcasting what?" "Everything, sir. It is a noise wall. We are receiving thousands of overlapping signals. All human media. Old radio dramas. Weather reports. Cooking shows. Religious services. Sports events. It is all of their noise, thrown into the sky at once." Rock listened as the comm system, set to scan, picked up fragments. A passionate football commentator. A soothing voice teaching a language. A dramatic opera. It was the chaotic, vibrant, messy sound of a living civilization, amplified into a shield. You could not target a population you could not see, and whose defining characteristic was a cacophony of peaceful, ordinary life. On the surface, under the silver sky, people looked up. They had been told to expect this. It was strange, and it blocked the sun, turning day into a twilight gloom. But it was not an attack. It was a blanket. Life, curiously, went on. Markets adjusted. People used electric lights. The world continued under the man-made twilight. For Rock's fleet, it was a total strategic dead end. They could not bombard what they could not target without committing genocide on a planetary scale, an act that would shatter the already fractured Council. They were stuck. The Luminal, receiving this report through a garbled and suspicious-sounding channel, reached a desperate conclusion. The human strategy was not to win a battle, but to make battle impossible. They were weaponizing their own existence. The only solution was a decapitation strike to find and destroy the human leadership, the mind behind this madness. They had to assume it was in a hardened bunker, likely on the Korean peninsula, where the first strange military responses had originated. Using older, less affected visual scans from before the sky fog, they identified a probable location. Rock authorized a high-risk, high-precision drop. An elite unit of vortex commandos, beings who could shift their gaseous forms, were sent. They descended in stealth pods that pierced the metallic fog, navigating by last known terrain data. Their mission was simple: infiltrate, find the command center, and eliminate everyone inside. They materialized outside a heavy blast door in a mountain, their forms coiling like mist. They bypassed security with advanced tools. They streamed inside, ready to kill. What they found was a room, but not a command center. It was a circular chamber, empty except for a single, comfortable chair in the center. In the chair sat an elderly woman named Ji-hai. She wore a simple hanbok, the traditional Korean dress. She was knitting. A small pot of tea steamed on a table beside her. The vortex leader solidified, his weapon raised. Are you in command?" Ji-hai looked up, her eyes calm behind spectacles. She did not seem afraid. "In command? No, I am a librarian. Or, I was. Would you like some tea? It is very calming. Where is your military command?" The vortex hissed, his form shimmering with agitation. "Gone, she said simply. Moved hours ago. They knew you would come here. It was the logical place. So they left me. Why? As a sacrifice? Ji-hai smiled, a small, sad smile. No, as a message. And as a gift. She put down her knitting. The message is this. You cannot find our leadership because it is not in a place. It is in an idea. You cannot kill an idea with a plasma bolt. The gift. Is this conversation? She gestured to the walls. They were not walls, but seamless screens. They flickered to life, showing a torrent of images. The Gorvins listening to Batch in the desert. The 3 elderly prisoners sharing stories. Families having a picnic under the silver sky. Children drawing pictures of the strange ships in the sky. It was a collage of human persistence. We are not what you think, Ji-hai said softly, pouring 2 cups of tea. You see a weak, divided species. We are. That is our strength. We are so many things at once. We are warriors and poets. We are cruel and kind. We are terrified, and yet here I am, offering tea to a being who could kill me. Can your logic explain that? The Vortex Commando stood, utterly disarmed. His mission was to destroy a command node. This was not a node. It was a philosophical statement. He was equipped for violence, not for a tea party with a grandmother who talked in riddles. Your leaders, he finally said, his weapon lowering slightly. They planned this. They left you here to confuse us. Yes, Ji-hai agreed, sipping her tea. And is it working? The Vortex had no answer. He received a frantic recall order from orbit. The mission was aborted. As his unit dissolved and retreated, the last thing they saw was Ji-hai, picking up her knitting again, humming a quiet tune under the electric lights of the empty bunker. The report that reached Rock was the final piece. The decapitation strike had found not a head, but a heart, and it had not known what to do with it. The fleet was sensor blind. The ground troops were ineffective. The Council was tearing itself apart. And the enemy had just proven it could be anywhere or nowhere, and was utterly unafraid to be both. ROK sat in his command chair, the weight of failure pressing on him like gravity. They had come to enforce order. They were leaving behind only chaos, most of it their own. The human retaliation was not a counterattack. It was a mirror, showing the Council its own fragility. And in that mirror, they looked terrified. A tense, unnatural silence had fallen over the Galactic Council's fleet. The ships hung in orbit like stalled insects, their purpose gone. Below, Earth's silver sky shimmered, a perfect blind. Aboard the Judgment's light, Commander Rock received the order he had been dreading. It came directly from the luminal, its usual chime-like tone now strained and thin, like cracked glass. The message was simple. Disengage all offensive operations. Hold position. A delegation is coming. The delegation was not a military reinforcement. It was a single, unarmed shuttle. It carried 3 of the most senior diplomats, still capable of speaking to one another without erupting into argument. A Gravani elder, a weary Verity archivist, and a luminal adjunct, a smaller, mobile fragment of the High Arbiter itself. They came because they had no other choice. The Council's grand project was collapsing into bickering tribes, its logistics in ruins, its common language now a source of suspicion. The disease had to be stopped at its source. The shuttle requested, and was granted, permission to land at a specific set of coordinates. It was not a military base. It was a wide green plain at the foot of mountains, now under the diffuse, gray-silver light of the obscurant field. As the shuttle doors opened, the delegates saw a single, simple table with 2 chairs had been placed in the center of the field. On one side sat a human woman. She was young, with a calm and unreadable face. She wore the same simple gray envoy suit Jin had worn. Her name was Yuna. The Gravani elder Kor spoke first, his voice a low rumble. "You are the new leader?" "I am the new envoy," Yuna corrected softly. "Humanity does not have a single leader for this." "Not anymore." The luminal adjunct pulsed, its light scanning her. "You have neutralized our capacity for coherent action. State your terms for the cure." Yuna gestured to the empty chair opposite her. "Please, sit. This is not a negotiation for a cure. It is a negotiation for a new understanding." Wary, the luminal fragment hovered over the chair. The Viridi, named Elia, settled her root-like tendrils on the ground beside it. Kor remained standing, a hulking monument to distrust. Yuna began. "You executed our first envoy, Jin, for the crime of defiance. You believed you were cutting off a diseased branch. You were wrong. You were pruning a plant, and in doing so, you scattered its seeds. The disease you feared was our inherent nature, adaptability, creativity, and a deep resistance to extinction. Retribution mode was not an act of war. It was a demonstration. A proof of your capacity for chaos," the luminal chimed. "A proof that your system is fragile," Yuna said. "You built a civilization on perfect translation, perfect logic, perfect order. We simply showed you that perfect things are easy to break. We introduced a small amount of human ambiguity. And look," she waved a hand gently toward the sky, implying the galaxy beyond. "Your unity fell apart faster than any of our cities did." Kor growled. "You boast of your trickery." "I state a fact," Yuna replied, her eyes meeting his. "You came to crush a disobedient child. You found, instead, a creature that does not fight the way you do. We fight by changing the rules of the game, and we have just changed them forever." Elia, the Verity, rustled softly. "The cultural transmissions, the music, the art given to our troops. This was also a weapon?" "The most powerful kind," Yuna nodded. "A weapon that asks questions. A weapon that makes an enemy wonder if they should be an enemy at all. Groth's Gorvans are not defeated. They are questioning. That is a state you have no protocol to handle." The luminal's light flickered rapidly. "You have made your point. Your species is a destabilizing agent. State your demands. What do you want?" Yuna folded her hands on the table. "First, full, unequivocal membership in the Galactic Council, with all attendant rights and a permanent security veto." "Impossible." Kor boomed. "You are a threat." "We are the threat," Yuna said, her voice hardening for the first time. "And now you will have us inside your council, bound by your own rules, or outside, forever unpredictable. Which is safer for you?" The delegates were silent. The logic was inescapable. "Second," Yuna continued, "the resource quota is abolished. Earth will develop at its own pace, trading as an equal partner." The luminal gave a faint pulse of agreement. The quota was already unenforceable. "Third, a memorial for Envoy Jin will be erected here, on this spot, and in the main chamber of the Galactic Council. His name will be recorded not as a criminal, but as a catalyst. You will acknowledge what you did." Kor shifted, the stone of his skin grating. "And if we agree, you will stop this. Psychological plague? You will fix the translation symbiotes? Restore our networks?" "Yes," Yuna said. "Our linguist, Kai, has already prepared the countercode. It will be released upon the signing of our accord. Order will be restored. The headaches will stop. Relief, palpable and heavy, washed over the alien delegates." It was what they had come for. But then Yuna spoke her final term, and it was not what any of them expected. "Fourth, the Galactic Council will fund and support a new institution proposed and led by humanity. It will be called the Department of Existential Cohesion. The luminal dimmed in confusion. Explain. You thought we were a threat. You were right. But the galaxy is vast. There may be other threats like us species, whose very nature challenges a rigid order. Or worse, threats unlike us, that you cannot even comprehend. You tried to handle us with a hammer, and you shattered your own hand. We will create a new tool. Yuna's gaze was intense. This department will study such threats. It will develop protocols for engagement that do not involve execution or invasion. It will find ways to integrate chaos into order without breaking either. Humanity, having proven it is the galaxy's most successful sapient existential threat, will now dedicate itself to ensuring no one else ever has to become one. The plane was utterly silent. The silver sky above seemed to press down. The delegates stared. They had come expecting demands for territory, for technology, for revenge. They were not prepared for this dot. It was not a demand for power. It was a demand for purpose. It was a demand for responsibility of the most profound kind. Humanity was not asking to be pardoned. It was sentencing itself to be the galaxy's guardian against its own darkest potential. KOR. The warrior was the first to grasp the sheer scale of it. You would become the shepherds of the monsters. We would become the understanding, Yuna corrected, so that no species is ever again mistaken for a monster just because it is different. The luminal pulsed softly, its light reflecting in Yuna's calm eyes. In this human's offer, it saw the end of the old rigid galaxy and the terrifying, uncertain birth of a new one. It saw the only logical path forward. To refuse was to live in perpetual fear of the human-shaped shadow. To accept was to bring that shadow into the light and give it a seat at the table. The terms, the luminal chimed, its sound final, are accepted. A document was produced, not on paper, but etched into a light tablet. Yuna signed for Earth. The 3 delegates signed for the Council. As the final signature was recorded, Yuna gave a small, almost invisible nod to a hidden sensor. Far away, in the bunker, Kai pressed a key. The counter-virus, the cure, streamed out into the galactic networks. On the Judgment's light, Rock felt a sudden, strange clarity in his next report. The annoying double meanings were gone. The order was just an order again. On the plane, Yuna stood. The obscurant field will dissipate in 12 hours. Your fleet is welcome to remain in orbit as guests until then, or depart in peace. The choice is yours. As the shuttle lifted off, carrying the stunned delegates back to their fractured, healing civilization, Yuna remained standing at the table. She looked up at the swirling silver sky, soon to be blue again. They had won, not by destroying their enemy, but by forcing them to evolve. Jin's death had not been avenged with blood. It had been answered with a burden so great it would shape the cosmos dot in the bunker. Min watched the feed. The words Retribution mode faded from the main screen, replaced by a new, simpler status, mission parameters achieved. Standing by Hana let out a breath she felt she had been holding for weeks. It's over. No, Min said, his eyes still on the screen, on the image of Yuna, alone on the plane. It is not over. It is just beginning. Now comes the hard part. Now we have to be what we said we are. On the surface, the first patch of brilliant, untwinkling blue began to show through the fading silver fog. The sun, real and warm, touched the grass where the memorial for Jin would soon stand. Earth was no longer just a planet. It was an idea, and the galaxy would never be able to forget it.